Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, January 14th, 2026, and today we have a fun treat for you all. I sat down this week with Jamie Swofford of Old North Farm and Old North Shrub to chat about the farm he owns with his partner Keia, his transition from chef to farmer, selling to chefs, and so much more. Such a great conversation, and I hope you all enjoy it. So let's do it. All right, Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jesse. I'm happy to be here.
I'm super happy to have you. I've been following your work for a while, and I'm very excited to have this conversation. So maybe just to kick it off, tell us a little bit about your farm, like where are you located, size, acreage, those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I'm half owner of Old North Farm. My wife and I run the farm together. We are halfway between Charlotte and Asheville, North Carolina. So we're right in the middle of that, Shelby, right in the foothills. So we're at about 1,000 feet elevation, but it starts gaining quickly if you go west or north. So we're right in this little sweet spot by the South Mountains. We're on a 3.5 acre plot. Our home is on that plot as well. We have 1 acre's worth of beds, permanent beds, and 20 of those are covered. We grow a big variety of crops for chefs and restaurants, for a farmers market that we do in Charlotte every Saturday. And we also grow for a couple different food hubs. And above and beyond that, we have a value-added product line. Right now, we have a line of drinking vinegars called Old North Shrub that are in markets. We do on-farm events. We have one large event every spring called the Fish Pickin'. It's like a big fish fry on steroids. And we have a nonprofit partner on our farm, and they're called Broad River Community Market. And it was a previous employee who started a nonprofit after Hurricane Helene of feeding folks without barriers. And they were going about it traditional routes of fundraising, buying food, giving it away. And we thought, maybe why don't you try growing food? And so we opened up a plot for them. They have 14 50-foot beds, and they've grown. In 2025 was the first pilot year. They grew over 1,400 pounds in that small plot to give away at weekly markets in the county. You know, being a business owner, running a farm, we have to get the highest price we can to stay in business. But being a farmer, I do feel that food is a human right, that everyone should have access to good, nutritious food. And this partnership allows us to do both of those things. And that was important to us. So that's pretty much what we do. We grow 12 months out of the year.
I love that nonprofit sort of combination there, that sort of collaboration. I think there's so much space that ends up going unused on farms too in a lot of ways, or not maximized. And I think in situations where your interests or your hopes are to be a part of the community, or like you said, like feed people who may not necessarily be able to afford that food. That's a really cool. I've not heard of that before. Was there a model that you all followed, or was that something that you kind of came up with?
No, it was like I said, it was a previous employee, and we kind of just my wife Keia came up with the thought, and then we put it into like just a pilot program where we had the space. We weren't going to be able to use that space. So we just allowed them to come on with a little bit of like my assistance in getting the beds ready, getting crops started. We came up with a crop plan, let them to it with some volunteer hands to do the physical work. And they've been doing 2 markets a week in the county and moving quite a bit of food. They're still fundraising. They're still buying food from other farms around us. But yeah, it's a great thing. And the biggest surprise was all of the energy that it brings to the space.
Yeah, because you have this whole new burst of people running around, right?
Right, yeah. And they're super into it. And that's so cool.
That's so cool. Yeah. And I mean, I imagine it's nice for them too to just have this, like, I don't know, you probably are somewhat of a mentor to the growers there, that they can ask you questions or maybe bounce ideas off you, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's fun for me. I get to do 50-foot beds of things that I wouldn't normally do sometimes. And yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. So talk about, so with the beds, are you on like a 30-inch bed system, or are you doing, what's your sort of bed system look
Yeah,
like?
we have 100 beds on 100 foot, 30-inch wide beds. So everything's on 4 foot centers, 12 bed blocks for the most part. We had to tuck some things in to where they would fit, but we try to keep it as standard as possible. This is my 13th season going into it, growing full time under some name or another. I've kind of reinvented myself a few times, but it's like you just keep simplifying, and trying to narrow down this path. And that's where we are now. This is year 5 of Old North Farm.
That's cool. And you mentioned that product. It was a drinking vinegar, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, and like maybe even just to mention a little bit about the like process of getting something like that started?
Yeah. Well, it was a big surprise to me as well. I had a really good friend and his brother were brewing in Charlotte, and they were opening a brewery. This is 10 years ago now. And I had done foraging for them and got grown ingredients for them to brew funky beers with. And Jason Alexander at Free Range Brewing reached out and said, "Hey, we're opening this brewery. We're looking for a non-alcoholic beverage to be served on draft that's not kombucha." And that was basically the conversation. Would you be interested in making something like that? And I thought, man, that would be so cool. I could do that, and no problem. And that's just a simple task. So I went down the rabbit hole of researching like vinegar-based drinks. I'm a picklehead. I love acidified foods and vinegars. And I came up with what is now Old North Shrub. We had to figure out how to get it into a concentrate form so they could put it into a keg and carbonate it and then serve it on a draft system. So what we figured out was like I could give them a gallon. They could put it in a 5-gallon keg, add 4 gallons of water, and then have a nice non-alcoholic carbonated adult beverage that kids love. And so we got it dialed in, and it was a hit. And people were like, "Oh man, I would love to have some of this in my house," And so I was like, "Oh well, yeah, I could take that on. That would be easy." And then I went through the legalities of it, and it was such a journey. It took about 2 years to get acidified foods, commercial kitchen space, and all the bells and whistles and labeling and marketing and branding and all of that stuff done to get it onto shelves. And at the same time, being a full-time farmer, you're at the season's behest, like you're just, this thing has been the third leg of the business that is always on the back burner. I can go and process and make a vast amount of bottles of Shrub, and it can store at room temperature to be sold on the website or in wholesale markets or whatever. We've won Best in the South awards. We've won a Good Food Award with one flavor, Southern Food Maker Award with the drinking vinegars, and that's led me to now we have in the works. We have Old North Pantry is like the next staple line, and Hurricane Helene specifically let us know that pantry, like shelf-stable food products, are a need. Farm-based protein is a need, and I've always had dreams of a dried bean project, and other staples that acidified foods, pickles, salad dressings, jellies, jams, things like that we're growing on the farm. And, we'll get into my background, but as a culinary enthusiast, chef, cook, whatever you want to call it, those things really appeal to me, and I have a decent palate that I can make them consistently tasty.
How long has that been going on? How long have you had that product? Maybe you mentioned that. Sorry if I missed it.
Yeah. Old North Shrub has been 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Jamie, that is all super cool stuff. We're actually going to take a quick break real quick, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about your culinary history. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds.
Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Ohio Earth Food. So you got your soil tested or need your soil tested, it's time to contact Ohio Earth Food. Since 1972, they have been growers' trusted source for organic soil amendments to apply before you plant to prevent those deficiency symptoms that limit production. Their knowledgeable staff have all been a part of certified organic operations and can help you choose the best products for your soil and deliver or ship them right to your farm. With locations in Northwest Ohio and just north of Madison, Wisconsin, Ohio Earth Food wants to be your partner for organic inputs. Don't count on luck this year. Start your seeds in the Seed Catapult potting soil and put their Revita fertilizers in your beds, and rest assured that your plants will have all the nutrients, stimulants, and energy for whatever comes their way. Feed your soil and let your soil feed the plants. Visit them at ohioearthfood.com. All right, back to the show. All right, so tell us a little bit about, you mentioned a little bit about like your culinary background and that sort of stuff. Can you kind of talk about that and how that led into farming, or maybe they were sort of coexisting? Like, what was the story there?
Yeah, so I'll try to give you like the short version of the long story, but I grew up on the farm that I'm back on now. And my grandfather, so I'm third generation, my grandfather bought this property, started like a beef cattle operation and a commercial chicken farm. So I had jobs on the farm from an early age, So at 17, I took the first train leaving. I was like, no way do I want to stick around for this. But I needed a job and I loved food. I didn't feel that I had permission. Food from an early age was something that I saw my grandmothers do. Even on television, I saw Julia Childs cooking, another woman. And then one time I saw Julia Childs cooking with a man on her show, and that was Jacques Pepin. And that was like the first man that I'd ever seen cooking. And that like gave me permission, like, oh, I can do this. And that was like in my head from an early age, that I could do that. And so when I left the farm, I got a job in a restaurant washing dishes, and immediately like fell in love with the operation of it, the camaraderie of it, the cooks in the kitchen. It was like pirates on a ship or something back then, And so I worked my way up. I started doing prep. I was the dishwasher at a Denny's restaurant, and they started a promotion one Sunday morning. It was called the $1.99 Grand Slam. I may be aging myself, but I became the egg cook that day, and I never looked back to the dish pit. That started an 18-year career in professional kitchen life, and I just learned as much as I could from one place and moved up and continually moved up and moved locations, moved to bigger cities, and worked for some really talented chefs, and I got to travel a little bit and continue learning. And then questions started coming back to me like, I wonder how many hands have touched this vegetable before I touched it. How long has it been harvested and just sitting on the shelf, and what was it sprayed with? And a lot of these things I didn't have answers for. So there was a point in time that I was like, everything I needed was at the farm. I have to talk my family into letting me come back. I had a network of chefs that I was new and were friends with and working with. And so I had a clientele that I could come back. I started growing on 1/8 of an acre, and I was focused on baby greens, baby roots, garnishes, edible flowers, things like that. And when I first started cooking, it was learning a skill at an accelerated rate and seeing progress in my skill of learning it. And when I got back to farming, it was that same thing. I was learning about food at an accelerated rate, and it kept me focused on it, and it kept me excited about it and curious. Cooking is like you're using all 5 senses You smell things, taste things, hear things, touch things. Farming is the same to me. All of those senses, you're always aware of your surroundings. You're always tasting things. You're always looking. And one thing that I was able to do is like follow the life cycle of a plant. A lot of farming around me is monocrop or just basic garden crops. And to be able to watch a mustard green grow, like there's so much going on. You got microgreens that are like wasabi. You can let it go to baby greens that you can use in a salad. You can let it grow all the way out to large leaves and braise those down and douse them with vinegar. You can wait until it flowers, and you can use those flowers for garnishes on plates or toss them in salads. And then even the edible seed pods, when they're green, they taste like little wasabi green beans or something, like being able to pay attention all the way through and capture moments in time. Like that was what was exciting to me.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I had a similar experience. I kind of came from a culinary background as well. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I cooked for many years. I moved to New York City to cook. I cooked in Louisville for 2 years. Like that's what I thought I wanted to do and kind of did for a while. So I always had an affection for it too. And it was kind of both sides of that story of like seeing the fresh produce and kind of like learning about it. And I remember there was this woman, Miss Gettelfinger, she would bring us older woman, just had a garden in Louisville, and she would bring us these amazing heirloom tomatoes. I was just blown away by that. But then the other side of it is, like not really knowing the farmers or like where the food came from, and then also once getting to the farm, like seeing all the different opportunities there that I'd missed sort of in a kitchen, like a lot of chefs don't even know exist. Everything from roots to seed pods, like you were talking about. Brassica seed pod blew my mind. Delicious. Just never had crossed my mind, with cooking. So anyway, I feel a lot of that. And also, I'm curious, like you mentioned a little bit about, sort of the sort of sensory experience of being a chef versus being a farmer. And I'm curious, like what your observations have been in sort of transitioning in terms of like the workload and how the work differs. Is there, did it feel like it translated well, or are there things like you didn't feel prepared for?
There's always things that I'm not prepared for, but that's when I'm learning the most, I learn fast and I can fake it until I make it, So the similarities in the lifestyle is like the cycle of harvesting something or planting something, growing it, harvesting it, storing it, selling it. That is the same as getting something into the restaurant, prepping it, holding it, going through service, and then sending it out on a plate, and then seeing the reaction from that customer. It's the same at farmers market. This is my favorite. I never thought I would be in a farmers market environment. That wasn't what I set out to do, but it is my most enjoyable shift of the week. The days they can be the same. I think it's all like, it's the same in the kitchen or on the farm. It's like your leadership capability can dictate how many hours you're putting in. If you can make it financially viable to hire folks who believe in your mission and vision and are in it as much as you are and can do that work, and you can step back and do big picture things. If you want to be by yourself, you can also do that, and you can work every daylight hour of the day. It's all self-determining, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I found was in some ways, like there was a lot of things that translated in terms of just the monotony of a certain task. Like if you had to cut a bin of onions, you were just cutting a bin of onions for whatever, an hour or whatever it was. And the same sort of idea applied to farming. It just felt like bigger and longer a little bit, like more spread out. Obviously it's hotter. Obviously everything's heavier. There's more physicality to it. But that sort of element translated where you could sort of set your body to task and do a thing, and then also just kind of engage with the smells and the sounds and the conversation and all of those things. I found that to be something that translated really well in a way that I was kind of delighted by, because it was one of my favorite things about the kitchen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's very relaxing, or meditative even.
Yeah, meditative is a good word for it. Yeah. With the farmers market stuff, are you growing a lot of stuff like specifically for the restaurant side and then for the farmers market separate, or have you found ways to sort of combine those two? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's a great question. What we've found is like a group of core crops that we try to produce those 50 weeks out of the year. Like we would try to have carrots, beets, salad turnips, radish, little gems, and salad greens, arugula, spinach. We try to have those things every week in some variety. The varieties change through the season, but we will try our best to keep those steady. And then those will go out to all markets. And then we'll do little pockets or blocks of storage crops or fun things. We have a separate like culinary herb and edible flower space that we can produce whatever we want there, and we're always experimenting. A lot of our work is before the season, looking at all the seed catalogs, all the varieties from around the world, and honing in on what it is we're trying to accomplish or who we're supplying to and the things that they want. I've always said that I can tell a lot about a chef by looking at their plates, looking at their food. I can tell how they think. There's always this like, it's the head or the heart. You're cooking from your head or you're cooking from your heart, and it's usually like a balance between the two. But when you own the business, it's from your wallet as well, and that we have to be cost effective for those clients, but we also want to wow them and let them know that we're working for them. Every chef likes to feel that way.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, that's a good segue into our third segment. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll talk a little bit more about that, about getting in good with restaurants, how we can treat them better, how we can get their attention, those sorts of things. So be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 48 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all caps, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. All right, back to the show. All right, so I thought we could maybe spend this last segment talking a little bit about the marketing side of things in terms of selling to restaurants, because you've obviously brought a lot of that knowledge, but I'm curious what you've learned from the production side about selling to restaurants, selling to chefs, kind of, we talked in the last segment about that, the sort of relationship side and also just the empathy side in terms of especially like business stuff. So talk maybe just a little bit about that. Like, how do you approach like getting in the door and those sorts of things?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to my early days. I had that chef experience, I have no problems walking in the back door of any restaurant, any chef-owned restaurant. I just feel comfortable there. I've been that guy in that restaurant with farmers walking in, and I would always be so happy, So I know that chefs are happy to see farmers. I just try to like be on their side. If I'm going for the first time, I'm just going to drop some stuff off, maybe a list or a card, and give them some food to play around with. But it's usually between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. They're not in service, maybe the chef's not even there. But when he gets back from his break, he'll have this nice little package and he'll remember that, It's all about the varieties. At Old North Farm, we're flavor first farm. If it doesn't taste good, it doesn't matter what color it is. We're just not going to grow it. But varieties do sell to chefs. They want something different, something beautiful, something that looks great on a plate and is also flavorful, nutrient dense, and cost effective. So we just try to hit all of those marks by packaging, making things look good when they get it. We're always conscious of plastics, keeping down waste, and getting things chef ready in quotation marks. It's like we spend more time in wash and pack than maybe some farms do, but I want that chef to be wowed when they receive that product, and we charge accordingly. We just price our product accordingly for that time. So
Can you elaborate a little bit maybe on the packaging thing? Like that is definitely something that comes up a lot when we talk about selling to chefs is, they almost want to see it in the same way they want their customers to see their food, or they want to see your food. So like, what have you sort of learned about, I don't know, appropriate packaging, limiting the plastic as you mentioned, but like also still making it look nice?
Yeah, we use either bags or boxes, but if it's stems, if it's baby collard greens, everything's facing the same direction with the stacked nice and appropriate. So when they open that box, it's just like looking at them. All of my knowledge comes back from being a chef, having like a special event, and you could call this number to the chef's garden and place an order, and it would come FedEx like next day, and it would be like open. It would be like Christmas morning. You got these beautiful little baby carrots, some French tarragon, like edible flowers, all these little things. And then you look at the invoice and you're like, oh my gosh, I think I can do this. That's what I thought anyway. So that being blown away or feeling like Christmas morning when I'm opening some vegetables is like, that's the feeling we want to get across every weekend and week out. We want chefs excited to use our stuff.
Yeah, the Chef's Garden. That place, is it up in Ohio?
Yeah, Huron, Ohio.
Yeah. That place has been around forever. I mean, yeah. I can remember that even back, 20 years ago or so. But just really landed on that model of like what you're talking about, of like, for them, they just shipped it overnight. But like that model of just really, really nice stuff, niche stuff, really well packaged. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that you took that and you were just like, oh, I can do this.
Right. Yeah.
Locally. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about chef communication? Like in terms of, is it kind of one of those things where you go in and you just say what works for you? Or is it one of those things that you're like, this is the system I use, are you texting, emailing, those sorts of things?
Yeah. What everybody uses, all chefs use a different form of communication, but everyone is on text. So basically I have just like a list, and I just put a menu out every week. Prices by the pound unless it's otherwise stated, and we start with roots and go to raw greens and hardy greens and all the way down the line. And they can order no minimums. Everything is ordered by the pound or by the each, and they text that order back to me. I just take those on the cutoff day. Like I send a list out on Sunday. I have an end of day Tuesday cutoff for Thursday delivery. So Wednesday and Thursday we're harvesting, and everything goes straight out like within a 24-hour period of when it's harvested. There are exceptions to that when you're covered up with squash and cucumbers. You're just picking to stay out of the weeds, but yeah. We pride ourselves on harvest to order as much as possible, so they're getting the freshest ingredient, sometimes without ever hitting refrigeration, just coming straight out of the field, going straight to the restaurant.
And you mentioned no minimum. Is there a delivery fee on top of that, or is it just like no minimum, you order what you...
No minimum, no hidden fees. We just price everything accordingly, and everything's wrapped into that price per pound. And, our hope is that we can have 5 stops within a 8-block radius. We do chefs and restaurants in Asheville and both in Charlotte as well.
Oh.
We offer a pickup at market for chefs in Charlotte, so we try to reach people while we're in our path. I started out like delivering door to door every restaurant. We also work with a food hub in Charlotte called Fresh List, and we give them a list, and they compile that with other farms and send it out to 90 to 120 chefs, restaurants, institutions, and then they send a harvest list, and we deliver it to them, and they take care of logistics from there, and then they add their fee on top. So it's 25% over our price for chefs, but they're paying for that convenience of getting everything at one time.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And then what about like growing things specifically for a chef? Are you doing any sort of like custom growing like that?
I always take into consideration, and I usually send out a questionnaire. Like if you had your wish list and you wanted 3 things, what would those 3 things be? And if any of those things line up, we always keep a little bit of like 15% that we can play around with and do some trials. We always do trials anyway, but always looking for better product and better ingredients. But I started out in the early years trying to do custom growing, and I think now that I know my land, I know the soil, I know what grows well here, and I know where I can push and pull. I like to know that I've built that trust, and the relationships that we're in, folks will buy whatever we're selling because they know it's the best quality. And that's our hope anyway.
Yeah, that's very cool. Jamie, this has been super cool chatting with you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all what you've got going on there.
Man, this has been the highlight of my day for sure. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Awesome to hear. All right. How awesome was Jamie and all that they have going on there? I love the collab thing with the nonprofit, the Shrub product that they're selling, all the things. Had a great time with that chat. And we'll hook it up with some links of how to follow Old North and all the work that they're doing in the show notes. And you can follow them on Instagram and all the places. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of January, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, it looks like, our pollinators. Tossman, Cedric Reed, Bill Price, William Wiley Madro, Dwight Yoder, Lynn Tompkins, Steve Hurlbut, Rebecca S. Lee Shelley, Brian McCarthy, Robert Kilgore, Steel Road Farms, Chris Main, Richard Gould, Norsk Guard Farms, Sue Rowland, Thomas Van Wart, Tyler Lloyd, Andrea Fronti, Jason Ruel, Earth Care Farmer Jane Murner, Derek Page, Meredith Light of Granite Springs Farm, Grown Up Farm, Bob and Ann Patton of Hexhamshire Organics, Jared Kirstead, Rivendell Farms, Fiona and Donnie of Firefly Farms, Laura Britton, Alberto Diaz, Peter Broad, Larry Shepard, Martian Cindy, DP, Kat Brannigan, Little Row Farms, Hank Zecca, Ashley Sharp, Jill Crosby, Madison, and Scott Roser. Shouts to all of our pollinators for all of your support every month. All right, so as you will remember from yesterday's episode, Max is a high schooler at a farm high school, and he's learning about the history of farming and specifically what happened to all the farms and farmers. And essentially what happened is pretty basic. Although no one knows for sure how it started, over the course of about 3 years, a blight took over everything. Like everything, but not crops, not plants, not animals, not that sort of stuff. It seems that some sort of mechanical blight had been created in some lab somewhere. No one is sure where, or just that they think it was an activist using an AI program and not like a government, especially because absolutely no countries were spared. But what it did was effectively like supercharge rust, so much so that almost no electronics on the planet were safe. The spores would enter buildings through the air, on people's clothing, in their breath. It was everywhere, and it moved fast, and that meant not only almost every computer in the world collapsed, but all those farm machines, including the tractors and combines, were soon rendered useless. Certain kinds of steel were spared, keeping some buildings structurally safe, but really not all. Like almost all electronics, metal, all that stuff, gone, useless. Max, he would come to appreciate, was part of the Great Restart. And in the restart, food was going to be a huge focus because, people need to eat. And so Max took that role very seriously. And what that looked like, well, that is for tomorrow on the Tomorrow Farm. Probably a name I've used before, but if not, there you go. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.